Always trust.
We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?
Is that going to
Zaslužujemo bolju smrt. Tijela su nam unakažena i iskrivljena, izvezena mecima i gelerima. Imena nam pogrešno izgovaraju na radiju i televiziji. Početni su stihovi pjesme istaknutog palestinskog pjesnika i akademika Mosaba Abu Tohe. Za Al Jazeeru govori o svom ratnom iskustvu i evakuaciji iz Gaze, o višedecenijskom pokušaju izraelske radikalne vlade da potpuno uništi palestinski identitet i kulturu, te razlici koju uvijek moramo praviti između vlada i ljudi. Abu Toha je u Sarajevu tokom međunarodnog festivala književnosti Bukstan promovisao i svoju prvu zbirku pjesama, stvari koje mi možda nađete skrivene u uhu, pjesme iz Gaze. Mosab, welcome to the Al Jazeera Balkans program. It's good to see you here with us, safe and sound.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be here with you.
So at the very beginning, a trivial question when we are asked is, how was your flight? But you have a whole story to tell.
Yeah, it's a really nightmarish story for me because of my Palestinian passport. It seems like in the United States I had to be delayed for 2 times before boarding my planes. The second time I was delayed, I had to miss my flight, and I had to look for another airline to book with because I was told that I cannot transit in Germany. So I tried to go to 4 different countries before coming to Sarajevo. So just before I boarded that plane, I was told I cannot transit in 2 Schengen countries. It was Croatia and Germany. So I had to wait for 6 hours to be told this. And then I had to reschedule another flight, and I had to wait for about 17 hours for that third flight. And I'm happy that I made it, but the thing that whenever people at the airports look at my passport, it seems like a suspicious thing, because the Palestinian passport, sometimes people would ask me, what is your name on the passport? Sometimes they would confuse my passport number with my ID number. That was one reason why I was delayed for my first flight. And sometimes people would confuse the expiration date of my passport with the issuance date. So it's really confusing, and as if the Palestinian passport raises a flag for people whenever I show up.
Your Palestinian identity was and is a problem. In late November last year, Israeli forces detained you when you tried to flee with your family to the north of Gaza.
I had a son who was born in the United States, so he is an American citizen. When the October 7th happened, we were asked to apply for an evacuation list. So we applied for an evacuation list with the American Embassy in Jerusalem. And our names, which is my name, my wife's name, my other 3 children's names appeared on the list to evacuate the Gaza Strip. We were in North Gaza, and we had to cross to South Gaza where the Rafah border crossing is. And that was November 4th. So on November 19th, we decided to go and take that strip from North Gaza to South Gaza. And that's where I was stopped by the Israeli army. They were in the middle of the Salah ad-Din Street, which is one of the 2 roads that connect North and South Gaza. I did not expect to be stopped by the Israeli army. There were hundreds of people walking in that line. So I was called out by an Israeli soldier without, it was not my name, it was description. He said, the young man with a black backpack and who was carrying a red-haired boy, which was my son, American son. He was 3 years and a half old. So I was surprised because the fact that our names appeared on the list means that we were cleared by Israel, by the Palestinians, and by the Egyptians. So I was surprised to be taken out of the line, to be later stripped naked of my clothes instead of 3 soldiers, before being blindfolded and handcuffed, before being beaten in the face and in my stomach, before being taken to Israel. And I stayed there for about 3.5 days without knowing whether my wife and kids from whom I was separated were still alive or not, whether they made it to a safe place or not. And the conditions were really horrible because there is not enough food. They just give you a crumb of bread, 2 or 3 drops of water. You are not allowed to go to the bathroom except after you are about to pee on yourself. When you go to the toilet even, there is no tissue paper. There is no even water to clean after yourself. And many people, many kidnapped people died under the Israeli interrogation, or because of the medical conditions they suffered from before they were taken. So the Israeli soldiers did not pay any attention to any people. They did not have any charges against us. They just took us, whether randomly or because they had some intelligence that this person might know something that they wanted to know. And if it wasn't for the great pressure that was put on the Israeli side, I had a few friends. I had so many fans around the world, especially in the United States. For example, the magazines and the journals that I published my work with, the New Yorker, the Nation magazine. I appeared on CNN. So many other places called out to the Israeli authorities to release me and to just inform them that I'm okay. So after great pressure that was put on them, they said, "We are sorry about the mistake, you are going home." That was the end of it.
But many remain in the custody without charge.
So just 3 days before I was kidnapped, I knew of another person who was kidnapped. So I was kidnapped on November 19th. Another guy I learned was kidnapped 3 days before me. He was released just 2 weeks ago. So he spent about 8 months in Israeli jails in horrible conditions. And just imagine after being released, after 8 months of being kidnapped, how much shocking news you will learn. A father he lost, a brother he lost, maybe a house that he lost. Just imagine how shocking it is that they were kidnapped, and then the news that they were going to get after they were released.
We know the fact that Israel forbids international journalists from entering Gaza, and not only journalists, but human rights observers, because of these stories like this, obviously. But many Palestinians became active on their social media accounts and networks. Has any international journalist tried at least to contact you or reach out to you over your social media accounts during your stay in Gaza?
Yeah, I was reached out by so many journalists and reporters from around the world, from the New York Times, from the Wall Street Journal, who were asking me for some information. What did you see? What happened? Can you connect us with this person who was, maybe he lost his family? So people were trying to reach out to us, and I made sure to provide as much information as I could. But at the same time, I myself started to become like a reporter. I started to be a replacement or an alternative for the missing or the absent international journalists whose jobs would be covering the war instead of me. Instead of me making sure that my wife and kids and my parents are safe, it was my job even to report on what's been going on around me. So many young people from Gaza found themselves photojournalists, writers, correspondents for some international outlets. So that's something that was imposed on us, and because there was no alternative, we found ourselves doing it, and we were surprised that people were following us and encouraging us to do more and more of this, because they need or they must follow the stories of what has been going on in Gaza for at least 9 months.
Are you satisfied with the West and how the West is covering the war on Gaza?
Yeah, I think when we talk about the West, we talk about governments and we talk about people. Just like when you talk about the Middle East or the East in general, you talk about people and you talk about governments. So in general, I'm really pleased to see the great number of people, especially the young, taking to the streets and starting their encampments on their campuses, asking for the ceasefire, which is something that should have been called for from day one. But luckily we had enlightened people who know a lot of things and who had access to information that so many other people are not willing to look up. So these people learned about what's happening in Gaza and they acted upon it. It's not about learning. I mean, learning about something is not enough. It's like, when you learn that there is big fire, crazy fire in your neighbor's house. I mean, learning about it is not enough. You should try to put the fire out. And this is what the people around the world, especially in the West, are trying to do. And we are grateful for the amount of solidarity that we are seeing in Gaza.
The Israeli official narrative wanted to present it as a self-defense. 9 months after several months, we started seeing the real picture. It's a war of annihilation. Israeli officials were quite open and are still quite open about it. They are making genocidal statements, intense, and then brutal military actions that confirm this. South Africa's case also argues this. The mere fact that in the first 5 months Israeli forces bombed and destroyed and erased all universities in Gaza confirms this as well. As a founder of the first English-speaking library in Gaza, the Edward Said Public Library, how does this destruction and erasure of Palestinian identity, culture and history make you feel?
Yeah, the erasure of the Palestinian culture, it's not only about the landscape itself, it's not about the buildings, but the culture itself. I mean, culture could be the memory of the people, what they had in memory about the city where they lived in. I mean, the erasure and the destruction of this city. I mean, Israel is not attacking Palestinians in Gaza. They are not killing Palestinians in Gaza. No, they are killing the city. They are killing the streets. They are killing the restaurants, the pharmacies, everything that we loved in our lives. So this erasure of culture and identity is not new. It's something that has happened even before 1948, when Israel, it changed the landscape. They renamed the streets in Jaffa, in Akka, in Haifa, etc. They stole the books from our grandparents' houses before they occupied Palestine. And they are looking for something to claim in order to prove that they have something in this land. What they are doing in Gaza is destroying everything that has meaning to us in Gaza. So it's not about destroying the streets or the houses. It's about destroying something that we belong to. So even after a ceasefire, we will not find a house to return to. But I assure you that Palestinians in the Gaza Strip have started to rebuild their houses. For example, my father, after our house was bombed on October 29th, created a small room for himself from the rubble. And I see other examples of people repainting their burnt houses. So no matter how vicious Israel is toward the Palestinian people, they will start to appear, to emerge from under the rubble of their houses.
You mentioned schools, museums, universities. It's not only institutions, it's also professors, deans, scholars, academics, intellectuals. One of these intellectuals killed was your close friend, Rifat. Can you tell us a story about him?
So he was a lovely person. He wanted to encourage his students not only to read novels and short stories or poems, but also to write their own stories and write their own poems, because this is how we write back. And that's the title of his collection, the collection of short stories that he edited in 2014, which is called Gaza Writes Back. So we are not reading, we are not only talking, but we are writing back to expose the reality of what's happening to us in Gaza. I remember Rifat calling me when I made it to Egypt on November 3rd. So he called me, and he did not know about my kidnapping a few days before that. So he called me and he said, "I'm so sorry, I did not know they did that to you. They are cruel, they are brutal, etc." And I told him, you know, I'm so sad that I'm farther now from you. I'm now in Egypt. I'm not even in the south, because Rifat was in North Gaza or in Gaza City. So I was so saddened that I was, but at the time, farther from Rifat, farther from my parents and my siblings and their children. So that was around December 6th or 7th. I got the heartbreaking news, the shocking news that Rifat was killed in his sister's house, because he got a call a few days before that from some Israelis telling him that we know where you are and we are going to get you. So I think he was staying at an UNRWA school, a shelter, with his family and other people. When he got that call, he said, "I'm not going to be among people just in case there is an airstrike that would kill so many other people. So he decided to stay with his sister. And in that airstrike on December the 10th, he was killed along with his sister, her husband, their children, along with his brother and his wife and their oldest child.
Why threatening a poet, a professor? Why detaining a poet?
Well, I think what Israel wants to do is to kill people in Palestine and at the same time prevent anyone from talking about it. So they want to kill you and to bury you, and there should be no witness. So they want to silence the poet, whether by killing, by threatening, or by detaining or kidnapping. And there are so many other journalists that we know of who have been targeted in airstrikes, one of which is Walid Dahduh, Al Jazeera's chief bureau director, who had lost his wife and some of his children before later losing his oldest son, Hamza, and before being targeted in an Israeli airstrike where his cameraman was killed and he was injured, but I mean now he is in Doha, he had to evacuate. So journalists are targeted as well as
paramedics, aid workers, yes.
Yeah, everyone is a target because they are in Gaza, whether they are Gazans or international aid workers.
You wrote a poem with the title, "We Deserve a Better Death." It's not "We Deserve a Better Life." What made you write this?
Unfortunately, death has been our reality since before I was born. I was born in 1992 in a refugee camp. I witnessed the first airstrike in my life when I was 9 years old. I got injured in an Israeli airstrike when I was 16 years old. I still have the scars from the shrapnel in my body. I was 16. I lost my house on October 29th last year. I was kidnapped on November 19th. I lost so many friends. So death, and not natural death, but death brought by Israel, this has become our reality, unfortunately, and it seems no one is able to stop Israel from killing us, whether in the West Bank or in the Gaza Strip, whether today or in 1948, before or after. So I was thinking, maybe even if we had to be killed, even if we had to die, at least let it be a decent death.
Yeah, the bare minimum.
The bare minimum of death. I mean, at least we need our faces to look as if we died. Because a few days ago, I saw the video of a girl, they only found her, just the front of her hair, of her face, not even her head. Just the eyes, the nose, the mouth. There was no hair, there was no skull even. So we deserve, if that child was to be killed, there is no one deserves to be killed. But even if she was to be killed, at least it should be something decent. Just shoot me in my head and that's it. Don't just destroy my body. And even after we die, people would say 5 people were killed or 900 people were injured. Come on, this is not about numbers. Even years, I said that in one of my poems, even years are not number. 2023 is not a number. 2024 is not a number. It has a lot of things to talk about. Just like the war in Bosnia. It's not about 1992, 1995. It's more than that. And this is what I'm asking for.
Human stories and human lives. You said it yourself, I'm shattered to poems. So poetry for you is more of a reflection and documentation of Palestinian reality than it is escapism.
Yeah. I find myself writing poems after being shattered in my heart when I look at photos and videos and when I hear stories about people struggling. Not struggling because they were expelled from their houses or because they got their houses bombed, but because even in tents, they can't find life. People have to wait for about 5 hours to fill a few liters of water. They run after the food that is dropped from the sky, and some of them get killed. So this shatters my heart, and this shattering of the heart comes to me in the form of a poem. So my heart is shattered into poems, or I am shattered into poems. So the poems that I write are what remains of my heart after watching and after thinking and reflecting on this horrific experience.
You mentioned massive protests around the globe. What does it mean to you? will the change come from the people, as we always ask, because the governments are currently not interested in the conflict resolution?
I think it's not true that the governments are not interested. I think they are adding fuel to it. They are supporting Israel. They are giving it weapons. They are apologizing on its behalf. They are justifying that Israel has the right to defend itself. So this gives Israel more courage to continue what it's doing. And what they say that they are trying to make Israel minimize the casualties among civilians has no effect.
Clearly, the numbers
the numbers are crazily increasing. How? Because they continue to give Israel weapons. On the other hand, I'm not asking, of course, the European or the American administration to give Hamas or the people in Gaza, not Hamas, the people of Gaza who have the right to defend themselves against the invading Israeli army. I'm not asking them to provide them with weapons. Of course not. But I mean, what did you do to protect these civilians? Did you build anything for them? Did you designate an area where if Israel attacks it, then there is something else? And I think they did that when they warned Israel against invading Rafah. So invading Rafah was a red line. But they did it. And even the people, after leaving Rafah to Khan Yunis, which is another city next to Rafah, Israel is still continuing to bomb tents in Khan Yunis.
How do you explain this impunity?
Because I think these, I'm not talking about the people here, I'm talking about administrations and governments.
Yes.
I think they just watch what happened on October 7th and they keep watching it, and then when they see what Israel is doing to Gaza, they say, oh, it's justified by October 7th. So these officials, these administration people, they do not watch what's happening to Palestinians before October 7th. It seems like they are stuck in those few hours of October 7th. They keep watching it, they cry, and then they say, oh, Israel should continue. They should get rid of Hamas, even if it kills thousands of children. So it seems like they are stuck in a few hours on October 7th. They did not have TV before October 7th. There was no internet before October 7th. And there is no internet even after October 7th. So I think they are stuck in that, and they should be ashamed.
So even if the war ends now, we in Bosnia and Herzegovina at least know that the war is not over with the last bullet. How do you see then a lasting peaceful solution, having in mind everything said?
So from my point of view, and I think many other people would agree with me, if there should be a solution, it should be something that is based on justice for the Palestinian people. I mean, we have been under occupation for 76 years, and no one has been ever serious about offering us a just solution. I mean, the solution that the Palestinians got was a two-state solution in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, which I think constitute only 20% or maybe less of historic Palestine. So if there should be a solution, an everlasting solution, not an interim solution, a solution at all, it should be based on justice for the Palestinian people. Because if you go back to history, you would learn that the partition plan by the UN says that 55% should go to the Jews and 45% would go to the Arabs. After 1948, Israel, so the year Israel became independent, Israel, by that year, occupied 78% of Palestine. In 1967, they occupied Palestine 100%. And now, these days, you hear many Israeli advocates, you hear many Israeli officials saying, we have withdrew from Gaza in 2005.
Which is not true, because they hold the electricity, the water. We have seen this.
Yeah, they control the borders. I mean, I couldn't leave Gaza until I was 27 years old. So about 12 years after 2005. I mean, you can't put me in a cage when you were inside with me, inside that cage. You can't tell me, oh, I left you in the cage without me being there. But you are closing the cage. I'm not free. And who are you even to put me in a cage? I did not ask you to put me in a cage in order for you to brag about leaving me free to fly inside the cage. This is what they are doing. So they are putting the Palestinians inside cages, and they would say, this is your state. While they enjoy the rest not of the room, but of the whole planet. I would not say even the house itself.
So what would be your message to everyone watching us?
I think what people can do around the world is to continue to educate themselves and educate themselves from the Palestinian people. Because if I want to learn about what Bosnians have gone through, I would ask the Bosnian, what did you do? What did you go through? I want to go to history books, because I am the story. You can talk to me. So what I ask people to do is to talk to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, in the West Bank, in the diaspora, even in 1948. You should talk to them. You should listen to them. You would ask them for what they hope for. You can't consult and ask Israeli historians, oh, what do you think about the Palestinian case? I mean, Palestinians have had great authors, great professors around the world who told the whole world about Palestine and the Palestinian people and their culture, the rich culture before 1948. We had cinemas, we had an airport, by the way, in Qalandia, which some Arabs from outside Palestine used to travel outside. So Palestine had an airport. So Palestine was not a desert as the Zionists wanted us to believe, but it was a paradise for the Palestinian people, and that's why they wanted to take it. They took Palestine on a golden plate.
Mosab, thank you for your work, for your courage, your resilience, and your time here in Sarajevo.
Thank you so much. I look forward to watching this.